All right, blessings, and thank you for joining. Those of you that are here, and those of you that are going to view this later, I want to thank you. I want to ask you to consider if you spend any time or have any aspirations of being one that comforts others or provides consolation, or if you're in any kind of a ministry, whether it's prison, whether it's a nursing home, whether you have a sick loved one, or if you're a leader, a pastor, a teacher, someone that is relied upon to be a good connection between God and man, or just somebody that is always there, you'll need this lesson. We are entitling this, we're in Job chapter number 6. I'm sorry, number 7, actually. We've moved on. So we're in Job chapter number 7. And this week's lesson is entitled, as you can see, A Lesson in Compassionate Listening. I don't know if you know what that means or not, but let's go ahead and look into it and let's get to the bottom of this chapter, lesson number 7. Please tag, text, like, share, and if you want to comment, be certain to comment. Your comments are welcome. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe. All right, let's go ahead and look into chapter number 7 of Job. And again, this lesson is entitled A Lesson in Compassionate Listening. Everybody has the ability to feel compassion, some more than others, some much more than others, but not everyone has the ability to provide comfort and support to those that are struggling. And this is the type of support that is very well needed, much needed, absolutely free, but your body responds to it, whether it's sickness, depression, anxiety. This is the kind of care that people can rely on without medication. I'm not saying don't take your medications. I'm saying this is an added benefit to comforting those that are grieving. So in chapter number 7, we're going to look at this chapter realizing that Job now is responding to his friend Eliphaz, who was the first one to give a word to Job after hearing Job complain. And his response to Job was, of course, it was extremely crass. He told Job that, in so many words, you're not a victim. Don't try to, position yourself as someone that, it just came into or fell into misfortune. As a matter of fact, part of the counsel of Eliphaz was, um, trouble doesn't just spring forth out of the ground. But, he said, I know that man is born to trouble as the sparks do upward fly. But Job, this didn't come out of nowhere. You did something. So you can see a hurting individual, whether they're wrong or whether they're right, that would definitely just make the pain sharper and even distance them from the person that is there. Not only that, if they weren't hopeless before then, now they're hopeless when it comes to the consolation of people. And these weren't just any people, these were their friends. So in this lesson, I'm asking that all pastors, preachers, teachers, ministry, visitation ministries, and sick and shut-in ministries, those that are the relied upon source of wisdom in the family, the sages, or just someone that's just a good friend and able to be there. Look at this lesson and make sure that you understand what went wrong. All right, so in chapter number 7 now, we are there. And I think that the book of Job is a good book for everybody right about now. The entire world is going through a great deal of struggle. So the book of Job shows us the behind the scenes story, the backstory. We get the backstory of what was going on in the suffering of Job. Of course, at this juncture, we know more than Job knows. And we see Job doing things that we may not see ourselves doing in his conduct and the way that he maintains his integrity. We see that clearly in ways that we may feel we can't. But Job was a man of like passion, just like we are. So Job was able to do it, and we are in a better covenant, a new dispensation of grace. Remember, Job lived in the time of the patriarchs, which was before the law. But we're under grace, meaning the power of God. So we're no longer under the law, but we're under grace. So we have power. And he did it, so we can do it. But let's look at it. This is not a very long chapter at all, so we won't be long today. But let's look at it with intentionality, positioning ourselves to be vessels and instruments that God can use in a time when comfort is needed. All right, so verse number 1, and this again is Job, and what he's going to do is respond to Eliphaz's accusation that Job was being dishonest, hypocritical, and that his responses were over the top. And let's hear what Job has to say, because now he speaks up for himself the first time. All right, so in verse number 1, this is what Job says. He says, "Is there not an appointed time to man upon the earth? Are not his days also like the days of a hireling?" An appointed time, yes. There is a period of time that we spend in this part of our existence. I like to look at it that way, because often when you'll hear someone talk about a person that passed away, they will say they were, or they used to be, or I loved, as opposed to saying I love, as in past tense. But the individual continues to exist. They're just not in our sight. So we are going to approach this, what Job is saying, as far as the appointed time, as the time that is designated for us to be upon this earth. All right. So he says, "Is not there an appointed time for man upon the earth?" And if we realize that, we would probably amend some of the ways that we have. Uh, this is what was said, and I'd like to go there. This is what Moses said. Now, you know, many of the Psalms are written by David, but there's one that was written by, I believe to have been written by Moses, and that is the 90th Psalm. Very poignant. Listen to what he says in verse number 1, chapter 90. "Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hast formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God." So you have always been in existence, and as much as you have always been in existence, you have also always been our dwelling place. So whether we are in the body, Paul says, or whether we're not in the body, but to live is Christ and to die is gain. So Job has a good grasp on this, and we see that. And again, we're before the law, before a lot of information was imparted and regulations and the instruction, the statutes of God, the oracles of God were given. Job understood man had an appointed time. He's going to talk about it in about 7 more chapters, and we'll dig more into that. But he asked Eliphaz, in all of your critique of the way that I have behaved myself or the things that I have said, isn't there an appointed time? Now, if he's asking a question like that, then obviously he's considering lifespan, a a period that we have to spend in this world. Hey, God bless you, Mother Wilson. Amen. And then also Kenneth and Margaret Payne. There, he's considering that there is a time that we're going to be on this earth. That's it. But we don't stop existing. We continue to exist. So many times when I speak of someone that has passed away, instead of saying I loved them, I say, I really do love them. If that was the case, because I know that there's somewhere else. So Job opens up again. He opens up. He says, "Isn't there an appointed time for man on the earth? And are not his days like the days of a hireling?" See, a hireling was one that he did his work not out of compassion and not out um, of commitment, but he did it for the paycheck. And if the paycheck ran out, or if the need, or if there was danger there, or if there was a problem concerning him, then he was pretty much done. And that is also correlating with self-serving purposes that are personal, as opposed to the well-being of the mission, whatever it is. So Job says, isn't a man's life like that? When we're finished with this part, we're done. And sometimes it's okay to feel that while we are on this earth, it is the appointed time that God has given us. But whenever my work is done, it is fine by me. To live is Christ and to die is gain. I actually still believe all of this stuff. And certainly, it has not changed. It's still true. Then verse number 2, as Job goes on, he says, "As a servant earnestly desires the shadow, and as a hireling looketh for the reward of his work, so am I made to possess months of vanity and weariness. Nights are appointed to me." Now, we do know that this happened over at least from this scripture, Job's suffering continued for months. Now, he says, I'm looking to get out of this. I'm hoping until the end. I do get the teaching that we have been blessed to receive, to tell us to learn and not to waste an opportunity to learn something when you're in a test. I appreciate that. And I try to live by it so that whatever is going to help me to develop more, to grow more, to understand, and to appreciate the place that I'm in and the work that's coming out of it, that's good. Job is in pain. Job is in deep devastation, mentally and emotionally. He has the deepest pains that anyone could ever have, and yet Jesus suffered more than him. But Job is a good example of suffering in every single way at the same time and not having anyone there to care or to listen. So when we listen to a person, even though it made sense and the things that Eliphaz said made sense, and even though there was good theology there, it just wasn't appropriate for the time, and it wasn't true about Job. We know that because God says in the beginning that, hey, saying, have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him in all the earth. Not just in that area, or he's one of the best people in society. God said there was none like him in all the earth. But yet, Job was forced in suffering. And in his time of suffering, the thing that should have helped him was to have his friends to come. Now, these weren't just any people. This wasn't just the average person. These were people that were close enough to him and cared enough about him that when they saw him afar off, their hearts were so broken until they threw dust in the air and tore their clothes and wept because they loved Job. Now, if I see people coming and I'm in pain, I'm suffering, and I know my pain may not go away, but there's something about the way that we have been made, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made. There is something about the way that we are made that when we see people that we care about and we know we have a good attachment to, that stimulates us and it lifts us. The body is designed in such a way that when you see or hear certain things or certain people are around or certain sounds or you get warnings, your mind processes that, and the brain tells the body to communicate that to your organs that hold certain hormones and enzymes, like your dopamine and your adrenaline and cortisol. The body tells it, send this through the body because what has just happened or what has been said or what's going on right now is going to affect them. And this is going to be a dispense of enough of this hormone to act medically, like medicine does, to prepare them for what's going to happen, going on, or to sustain them. When you hear, and I'm saying this and I'm teaching this lesson as a lesson in giving care because that's what I do. But when you see a person that is familiar to you, you may be in a facility, someone you go and see, they may be in a nursing facility, they may be in a rehab, they may be sick and shut in and not able to get out. They may be hospitalized. They may have just received a bad diagnosis. Maybe they're at home in their own surroundings and they just got bad news concerning someone else and not themselves. It's going to affect them. So if you're going to comfort them, which we often have a chance to do, and when we go, we take a little food and maybe we'll take, some flowers or a card and some money to help them along in this time. And that's good. But that individual is getting more from you being there than they are from what you're giving them because the body is now reacting to your presence. So, what you do when you get there, number one, is one thing because the body automatically responds to it with the feel good hormones and all of the encouraging chemistry that they need to be released into the bloodstream. But if after you get there, you say something that reopens the wound or that damages them or takes them by surprise or blindsides them or that is critical, insulting, or you may mean it well and you may be genuinely concerned, but it may injure them physically and emotionally. So you have to be a compassionate listener. A compassionate listener is not one that's listening to everything you're saying and in their mind, they're looking at this individual like Job's friend did. You're a hypocrite. You are a liar. You did something wrong. You are trying to make us feel sorry for you. If you're having any of these adverse thoughts at this time, you're not a compassionate listener. A compassionate listener is hearing and trying to assess what the person is actually going through, what that person is experiencing. Let them help you put yourself in their situation. It shouldn't have been too hard because they could see that he was suffering boils from his head to the soles, even if he stood or put his feet up or turned on his side or laid back. Wherever he was covered. So he was going to be hurt or burst one of those or more of those boils or just laying on a place that is sore. Usually you protect the sore part. But if you're hurting and you're injured all over, there's nowhere to turn. Now you go to the inward part. And you start looking at it emotionally and psychologically, there is a cure. What they're giving me here at the hospital is slowly working on it, but it's not as bad. I do know that it'll get better. Maybe that won't be the case. Maybe it's the opposite. But what you say is important. So a compassionate listener is going to be one that tries to put themselves in the other person's place. Otherwise, you can say things that, or do things, or not do things that make this a bad outcome as opposed to a good one. I talk to people, and you know, it's not so important of the fact that you went as it is of how you left them feeling when you went. Are they better off because of your visit? Are they more comfortable and encouraged because of your visit? Don't try to fix it. You can't if you can't fix it, just being there is enough. And that you listen and that you allow them to cry it out, to talk it out, to just kind of grieve before your presence, not even being able to say a word, that means more. So that's why Job said that as a servant earnestly desires the shadow, and as the hireling looketh for the reward of his work, so I am made to possess months of vanity. All right. Worthlessness. This suffering was just unnecessary, uncalled for, worthless. We know that there's purpose in it, but their understanding at that time is the way a lot of people still are. If we're suffering, it's because of something that we've done. All right. Then he says, here he said, and wearisome nights are appointed. So this has been written in God's log, and this has been assigned to me to have wearisome nights. And even in his night seasons, he would have nightmares and bad dreams, and he would wake up in pain and agony. So there was no rest, whether he slept or whether he wasn't able to sleep. It was just a wearying time. And the bigger part of it is that he felt that even in his dreams, God was coming after him. He says that. Let's just read a little further. Verse number 4 says, when I lie down, I say, when shall I rise and the night be gone? When will this nightmare, what day will I get up and this is finally all over? This nightmare, this period in my life, this time in my earthly existence, when does it end? He says, I am full of tossing to and fro unto the dawning of the day. I struggled to get comfortable here, to relax just enough so it didn't hurt too bad, to get some kind of rest or stay in this position. He said, I tossed and turned all night. Now, this is after these horrible words, and he's giving this message to his friend that accused him. So, in essence, Job is giving them a lesson on how to be compassionate listeners. He's going to get a little bit, they're going to come a little heavier, and their words are going to become more and more sharp, and Job is going to go right along with them. Not in a ungodly way, but he's going to make certain that they understand what he's saying and how they are coming across. All right, verse number 5 says, my flesh is clothed with worms and clods of dust. So, it's as if someone had just been in a motorcycle accident and car accident, and they've got glass all in their body, all over, and these injuries, these cuts, and these wounds are now starting to bleed. And then the dust from being in the accident and the dirt from where I rolled over into the ditch is now down in them. This is the way that I look. It's not a pretty sight at all. It's not just a sight of soreness. There's no cleanness about it, because the oozing of the inflammation and the oozing of the pus and the blood and the increasing size of the sores. And then I'm caked with dust because I'm down here in the ash heap, and I don't have a home to even go home and soak in a tub in or wash myself in. I am in the most miserable of circumstances. So 5 says, my flesh is clothed with worms and clods of dust. My skin is broken and becometh loathsome. I'm just disgusting. Look away. I'm just terrible to look upon. I'm a sight that is more of a spectacle than it is to look on and to have compassion. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle and are spent without hope. So, you know, this is just a cycle that is just relentlessly going on like a weaver's shuttle. And I don't have any hope. I don't see any end to it. And this is where, again, you put yourself in that person's place. And as opposed to drawing conclusions on why they are there, why they're complaining, just try to feel what they're feeling. And if you can remember, and you may say, well, how can I feel what Job felt? Or how can I put myself in a place where I can be compassionate towards something and I can't begin to imagine what they feel because I have not been there? Well, it's pretty understandable that you ask that question, but the answer to that would be, if you can't remember a time when you uh, have been through what Job's been through, if you can listen to what they're expressing, the hopelessness, the restlessness, the tiredness, the loneliness, the anguish. If you have ever been in anything that has made you feel a sense of, I don't see the end of this tunnel, or this hurts pretty bad, and nobody seems to understand. Well, then if you can put yourself there, then you can be a more compassionate listener. Until you are a compassionate listener, you won't be able to give the fullness of what you're capable of giving, or the fullness of perhaps what they need. Now, as we go on, we're going to find out that they should have known better. And we're going to find out that God was infuriated with them because they didn't know better. And we're going to read that, and we're not going to study it as a time in a season where we ought to, come down hard on ourselves. But if we can just see ourselves as being far from that place of giving and comfort and being a consoler, or just having compassionate listening, if we come to the point where we can realize, I can see where I can make some adjustments, then this lesson has served its purpose. All right, we only have a few more verses. So, verse number 7, I also wanted to read it to you. I'm praying that many people will see this. Hurt me. I am praying that many people will conform to this type of care. Verse number 6 and 7 actually shows where, when we look at the first part of those first 5 verses, Job was talking to Eliphaz. Now, when you get to verse number 6 and all the way down to the end of this chapter, Job now is not talking to Eliphaz, Elihu, or Bildad. Job, from this verse down, is talking to God. All right. So in this verse, number 7 says, "Oh, remember that my life is wind. My eyes shall no more see good." He's talking to God. I'm going to read it in a New Living Translation. He says, "My days fly faster than a weaver's shuttle. They end without hope. Oh God, remember that my life is but a breath, and I will never again feel happiness." But see, this is where you can start to be more compassionate. I will never again feel. Have you ever been to the place in life where you thought, oh, this is the worst thing that could have happened? I'll never laugh again. I'll never be happy again. I cannot even imagine that I'll see days where I smile because this has indeed occurred. So he says, I'll never again feel happiness. You see me now, but not for long. You will look for me, but I will be gone just as the clouds dissipate and vanishes. Those who die will not come back. And that is true, because when we leave this world, we don't come back in form of a vision or hologram, or we don't come back as a ghost. We don't come back and make appearances and, oh yeah, I was talking with my mom last night, and there may be thoughts and memories, and there may be times where their words are more tangible, and you think on them so until just a comforting presence is there in your heart. You've got that comfort. But when they die, they don't come back. So Job is correct there. They are gone forever from their home, never to be seen again. So we should be kind to one another, because the day is coming when, as we sometimes get the circulations on social media, it says, one of these days you or I are not going to be here anymore, and I won't be able to say these words to you, and we kind of add our little 2 cents in and we'll pass it on. And it's true. Job is saying, I'm going to be gone from your sight, and I'll never be seen again. Now, give it another 100 years, 200 years. Because my grandmother, if she were still alive, she was elderly when I was born, because my father was the middle child and he never had a child until he got into his 40s, and I was his firstborn. My grandmother, if she were alive, would be 132. She was born in 1893. Give it a couple 100 years, and it won't make a difference what's going on this earth. You'll probably be mostly forgotten for the most part, hardly thought of. If you made a good impression, there may be occasions where you are remembered. But he says here, he says, just as the cloud dissipates and vanishes, he says, those who die will not come back. They are gone forever from their home, never to be seen again. I cannot, verse number 11, I cannot keep from speaking. I must express my anguish. My bitter soul must complain. I want to stop right there, because if you're being, again, I keep going back to the theme of being a compassionate listener. And we want people, we were taught when we were coming up, we were taught that sometimes it was preached to us, or sometimes it was just said that, oh no, don't say that, don't speak that, don't claim that. Your words have power and they can change everything. They may change the way that you think, but it's not magical that just because you said it, oh, now it's going to happen. I shouldn't have said that. It's almost, it was almost like teaching if you break a mirror, you're going to have bad luck. That was something we believed. As well as children, you'll have bad luck for 7 years. If a black cat passes your or crosses your path, um, something terrible is going to happen. There were just all kinds of old wives' tales, but we were taught that not to say things because if you say it, you're going to bring it upon yourself. It was kind of like a self fulfilling prophecy. All right, do we believe that? Well, here in this case, let's take it case by case. It's not a blanket statement, but let's take it in this case. Well, Job says here clearly, let's go back to in the New Living Translation. He says clearly, and I do enjoy savoring these scriptures. In verse number 11, he says, I cannot keep from speaking. I must express my anguish. My bitter soul must complain. Now, I can't say this to everybody because some of the things that I would like to say, they would make me feel worse for saying it. They would criticize me, they would stop me, they would shut me down. But it might be part of my grieving process. It may be a part of what I need to get out because it's in me, it's bursting out. I'm gushing with tears because of what is troubling me in my mind. And I'm feeling like Job was at that time, that he was in the presence of those that he could be vulnerable with and that he could be just candid with. And so as he's talking to God, he's saying, I have to speak out. My soul is in anguish. I cannot hold this in any longer. Verse number 12, he says, am I a sea or a whale that thou settest a watch over me? So now again, he's talking to God. And this time, and this is the way he is with God. And God said, there's none like him in the earth. So you may criticize him, but I'm not. But he's talking to God. He said, am I a sea or a whale? In verse number 12, you said, watch over me. Are you just stalking me? Are you standing over me, looking for an opportunity to see to it that are you just watching me suffer and, not doing anything? Is your focus so intensely aimed at me and everything I do and say that, I feel that you have no compassion and you're allowing me to go through this. You're watching me suffer. I've seen people look at others suffer. And I've been doing this work as a chaplain for about 15 years, and I've seen people look at others suffer and they stare at them, not to make sure that they're okay or if there's anything they can do to help, but they're looking at them like they're getting something out of it, as if almost they're saying, this is what you deserve. Or, this is what happens. You've been mean all your life. It was, and I've seen even people, I've even seen people, just say when the person asks, I don't know, is it okay to do this? They say, I don't know. They're talking to the person that's sick and actively dying. And then after the person died, that same person came back to me and I asked them, when was there going to be a memorial for this particular individual? Because I really cared about them. I'd spent a lot of time with them. They said, I don't know, because nobody really cares. So Job is getting this feeling that God is just staring at him and watching, hey, Rachel. And God is just watching him, just looming over him and just observing every moment of his anguish and agony and didn't care. So that's what Job says in verse number 12. But verse number 13, when I say, my bed shall comfort me, my couch shall ease my comfort, verse number 14. Then thou scarest me with dreams and terrified me with visions. That was what I was speaking of early. When I say, I'll just, I'll just go lay down and I'll rest and I'll find some comfort and some peace there. He said, and then when I lay down and I do go to sleep, you terrify me. You give me dreams, not dreams, but nightmares. He's talking to God like this. I'm glad that this is put into the Bible so that people can learn. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Rachel, so that people can understand what they're feeling. Love you, Mother Wilson, so much. And she loves you too, Rachel. Um, there are so many people that feel, God hates me, God doesn't care, God won't help me. And Job knew he had done nothing to offend God. He knew that, and God had even said it himself. But why? Why are you just letting me after I've done nothing? And even if I had done something, I'm appealing to you for help. And Job says this has been going on for months, and you won't even reach out to me. You won't talk to me. Now, that's another huge part of this lesson is that if you noticed from the very beginning, when Satan went out to attack Job, God has not said a word to Job. He didn't encourage him. He didn't tell him to hold on. He didn't tell him that his end was going to be better. He didn't tell Job better days are coming. He didn't say, I see your tears, Job. I understand your pain. He said to Job, he said nothing. But Job is talking to God. And look at the way that he's saying things. You're just watching me suffer. And when I go and lay down and try to go to sleep, and you give me nightmares. I know you're in control. And then what does he say in verse number 14, in verse number 15? And then he does say that you scare me with dreams and um, terrifies me with night visions. Now remember Psalm number 91. Now we were in Psalm 90 a few moments ago. Now these Psalms work together. And the whole Bible agrees in one. So God is never going to contradict himself. This is either the word of God or it's not. If it's the word of God, he doesn't contradict himself. It's easier to say, I need more understanding. Okay, in Psalm number 91, he says, and this is a psalm, I believe this is a psalm of David. But this is the one that starts off in 91, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High. But the verse I want to jump straight to is verse number 5. It says, thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night. So you see what Job says? He said, you terrorize me in the night visions and in dreams. So, he was accusing God of giving him nightmares and not even letting him rest because you have control night and day, and everything you're doing night and day, whether I try to sleep or I'm woke, it's working against me and you won't talk to me. So he says here, again, going back, don't be afraid of the terror by night. So those nightmares. I want to say something about that after I read this verse. Nor for the arrow that flieth by day. The enemy always wants to shoot his fiery darts. And, there are things that irritate, that frustrate, that those arrows by day are like situations that, you have to be concerned about because, they touch upon your life, your loved ones, your career, your livelihood, your health. Those are the arrows that fly by day, but the terrors by night, he said, don't be afraid of them. I just want to add this. Some dreams are so real that when you wake up, it seems like, you almost had that experience. And one of the dreams that I had, I had possession of something. And when I woke up, I actually started looking for it because it was so real to me. And it was It took me a minute to believe and to understand you were dreaming. But then there were other dreams that I had, and I knew I was dreaming. I knew I wasn't woke, but it was a dream. But it was intriguing to me the way the dream was playing out. And then it started to get very uncomfortable, and then it started to look like it was going to be disastrous. And so I remember thinking in my head, well, it's a dream, so all you have to do is wake up, which is exactly what I did. So dreams are very real. But I want to throw this in here too. And sometimes God speaks to us in dreams and in night visions. He gives us messages and he can talk to us very clearly in those. So staying prayerful and knowing that God is in control at all times. Obviously, Job knew that. The unfortunate part was that Job felt like these terrible things that were coming to him during the daytime and the things that were coming through his night visions and his sleep were so tormenting, he felt that it was God turning against him. Understand, too, God was not talking to Job. Verse number 15, he said, my soul chooses strangling and death rather than my life. I'd rather, my life is so hard. This is so, this is, this enduring this for months on end, night and day, no sleep, hours at a time, and pain. I'd rather be strangled and die. That's what he's saying. Let me see if I read that if in verse, and we're almost done. If I read that in, yes, let us love one another. Mother Wilson, you are just a jewel. Okay, so I'm going to read it in the New Living Translation. That's verse number 15. All right, I'm reading from the screen, so it may look like I'm squinting or my eyes are wide open, but I'm reading from the screen. It says, I would rather be strangled, rather die than suffer like this. Verse number 16, I hate my life. I don't want to go on living. Oh, leave me alone for a few remaining days. What does it say here? I love my life. I would not live always. Let me alone for, okay, my days of vanity. I'm just going to read the rest because we're almost done. I'm going to read the rest in New Living Translation. It speaks it clearer. It says, verse number 17, what are people that you should make so much of us, that you should think of us so often? He goes back to now another place in his heart concerning God. And he says, what are people anyway? You're awesome. You're terrible. You're tremendous. You're huge. You're all knowing. All power belongs to you. And by the way, people like us, we come, we go, we perish. What is it about people that you think of us so much? He goes back to a tender moment in his relationship with God. He said that thou should think of us so often. Again, from David, and we put the scriptures together. He says in Psalm number 8, and I will read it. These things help you to love God and to understand your moments. It pays to listen and to study your word. All right, chapter number 8, verse number 4 says, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou visitest him? For thou hast made him a little lower than the angels and crowned him with honor and glory. So, the same thing Job is saying here, why do you even put so much of your thought and your heart into us? And why do you think on us so often? But David, in his psalm, he says, even though we don't have the might and the strength of angels, he said, yeah, even in this state that we are in, he said, you have crowned us, meaning you have placed honor and glory. You've crowned us with honor and glory, meaning you have placed honor on our lives. And you have placed glory or power upon our lives. So Job was having a very beautiful moment with the Lord. Let's finish off this chapter. Let's go back into the New Living Translation. It just makes it so clear. In verse number 18, it says, "For you examine us every morning and test us every moment." Wow, can you imagine how a mother picks up her baby and she's cleaning and washing her little infant and checking him and putting, suppling him with lotions and baby oils to keep his skin soft and tender and protected. God examines us like that. So Job is having a tender moment here, even though he's in pain. Verse number 19, and we only have two more verses after that. "Why won't you leave me alone, at least long enough for me to swallow?" So now he's telling God, even in all of this, just go away. Leave me and stop standing over me in this torment and anguish, at least long enough, he says in the King James Version. He says, long enough for me, um, 7. All right. Oh, I'm in Psalm. Okay, then he says here, in verse number 18. He said, "And that thou should visit me every morning." All right, verse number 19. "How long will you not depart from me and let me alone until I swallow down my spittle?" We take for granted being able to swallow, and some people do have to have gag tests, what they call a gag test, because their muscles in their throat are not working. And so, if that's the case and you feed them, they could very much strangle on that food, or it could go down the wrong pipe and they can aspirate and it can go into the lungs as opposed to going down the esophagus and into the stomach. And if it gets in their lungs, then more than likely they're either going to drown in the fluid that is in their lungs, or they're going to develop pneumonia. It's almost certainly life threatening every time that happens. But he was having a problem, so they would give him a gag test to make sure they were able to swallow, or if they had to give them food by way of a tube because they couldn't swallow. Well, Job says, "Why don't you just leave me alone so I can at least swallow down my spittle?" We don't think about that because it's a natural thing that we do without being thankful for. But Job had a problem even with that. Okay, we just have two more verses and we're all done with chapter number 7. I hope you're getting this. This is a lesson in compassionate listening. Verse number 20. All right, there's only 21 verses. "If I have sinned, what have I done to you? Or watcher of all humanity." He said, "Oh, watcher of all humanity, if I've sinned, what have I done to you? Why make me your target? Am I a burden to you? Do you just hate me? Are you just disgusted with me? Why are you watching me and you're observing me?" There are people that will watch you and that observe your life and they're looking for fault. They did it to Jesus, and he said, "As I was in this world, so are you." So it's not a joke. But he said, "What did I do? Tell me what I did. And am I your target? Am I just a burden to you? Do you just feel disgusted with me? Why not just forgive my sin, take away my guilt, for soon I will lie down in the dust and die. When you look for me, I will be gone." That is chapter number 7. That is chapter number 7. So if you ever need to just kind of gauge what kind of care you're giving someone else and how you are coming across, or what a suffering person is feeling, that they can speak freely to God, look at this video, pass it on to someone that may be going through some things, and let them know, here's a man that went through and he talked to God out of his heart. And God's not killing him, and neither is God telling him off like his friends are. But God allowed him to open up and to speak freely. He was able to speak freely. Now, this is a part that touches me. How is it that they can speak so freely and honestly to God, but those of us who say we love God, we can't stand to hear it from anybody else? We do not love God any more than we love the person that we despise the most. That's where it ends with God. Wherever your love ends with that person, as Job said, am I a burden to you? Am I a target? That person who is a target to you and who is a burden to you, you are no closer to God. I know in your head you are, but in God's heart and in God's records, you're no closer to Him than you are to that individual. Because He says, what you have done to the least of these, you have done it unto me, my brethren. All right. Well, that's our lesson for today. Chapter number 7 of the book of Job, a lesson in compassionate listening. I do believe this is a book coming from me, and perhaps someone will pick it up and gain something from it. All right. Well, that's it for today. So I'm going to say thank you again for joining us, and I'm going to ask you, if you will, kindly share this and post it on your timeline. And do me a favor before you hang up and go ahead and like uh, this lesson there where it says like. Go ahead and like and then share. And if you have any other comments, feel free to put them on there. It helps the algorithm. So that's chapter number 7. I will never forget this chapter. This is a chapter that I never looked at so closely to hear from him. Yes, he loves us all so much, Rachel. It's amazing. It's overwhelming. Sometimes he will show you those moments of love. Yes, God will bless us all. Tomorrow is Tuesday. We are beginning our ministers revival at our church, Kingdom Apostolic Ministries. I'll begin at 7 o'clock. It'll be at the Detroit campus, and it will be on YouTube under Kingdom Apostolic Ministries, Ministers Revival, 7 p.m. And then we have the Wednesday night is going to be the same, but Wednesday at 5 o'clock, my husband, Elder Daniel Simpson, and I will be teaching the Sunday school lesson, Parting the Red Sea. Never think you know it all. Never think you've learned it all. God will show you something new if you are teachable. All right, if the Lord says the same, we'll be back next week with chapter number 8. And chapter number 8, I think it's going to be just a little bit shorter. It is 6 o'clock. We have done just what we needed to do. Uh, Chapter number 8 is 22 verses. All right. Well, listen, I love you all. God bless you. Thank you for joining and being a part of this time of teaching. And keep us in your prayers. Now to Him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of His glory with exceeding joy. To the only wise God, our Savior, be glory, majesty, dominion, and power, both now and forever. In Jesus' name, amen.